Boker Tov, Good Yansif, thank you once again for joining us here at BHSS this morning. We are at Yom Kippur. I hope that you have everything that you need around you in order to have a fulfilling and a powerful, meaningful Yom Kippur. Just a reminder about self-care. The idea behind fasting for Yom Kippur is not to land yourself in the hospital. It is not to harm yourself. It is to be able to concentrate on your prayer, on your atonement. If you cannot fast because you need to take medication or because you need to eat for your own health, please take care of yourself. That is what we would want, and indeed, that is what God asks of us as well. We're going to begin our service today on page 138 with Matzovu.
Matzovu, Matzovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, Matzovu, Matzovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, Va'ani berov chastecha, avo v'techa, ishtachavecha l'kodshecha, be'yiratecha. Matzovu, Matzovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, Matzovu, Matzovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, Adonai ahavti, me'on betecha, u'mekom mishkan kivodecha, mishkan kodecha, va'ani eshtachave, ve'echra, evrecha livnei Adonai, osi, Matzovu, Matzovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, Matzovu, Matzovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, Va'ani tefilati lecha, Adonai et ratzon, Elohim berov chastecha, Elohim berov chastecha, aneni be'emet yishecha, Matzovu, Matzovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, Matzovu, Matzovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, Mishkenotecha Yisrael.
I hope the that by now you have gotten used to singing with us, to praying with us, to reading with us, to being fully present in these services. As we turn now to page 160, we think of all of the things that make each and every day miraculous, those things that sometimes pass us by without our giving gratitude to God. But today, we stop for Nisim B'chol Yom and we recognize the everyday miracles. Page 160.
Please join me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Your great power gave the mind discernment to distinguish light from darkness.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. You are the source of blessings, Adonai. Your great power opens eyes that cannot see.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Your great power brings freedom to the captive.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Your great power lifts up the fallen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Your great power spreads the land upon the waters.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Your great power has made all that I need.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Your great power gives firmness to our steps.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Your great power clothes the naked.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Your great power gives strength to the weary.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Your great power removes sleep from mine eyes and slumber from my eyelids.
Amen. 162.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Your great power made us in the image of God.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Your great power endowed me with human freedom.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Your great power has made me Yisrael.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Your great power gives strength to Yisrael.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Your great power crowns Israel with glory.
Amen. We turn now to page 170 for Psalm 150.
Hallelujah, 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 El Bikocho, hallelujah, Kiauzo, hallelujah, Bigvorotav, hallelujah, Carol of good Lord, hallelujah, 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 take a shofar, hallelujah, benevel v'chinor, hallelujah, betofu makom, hallelujah, be'aminim ve'uga, hallelujah. Shama. Hallelujah, Betzilzale Trua, Kol Hanshama, Hallelujah, Kol Hanshama, together. Please join me at home. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
We turn to page 176. Please rise as you are able for Chatzi Kaddish.
Yitkado v'yitkadosh Shemei Rabbo Be'alma tivarach Yiruteh Ve'amalik malchuteh B'chayechon uve'yomechon uve'chayecho Beit Yisrael ba'agala Uvizman kariv v'yimeru Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabba mivorach le'olam olam ve'almaya Yitbarach ve'yishtabach v'yitbawar v'yitroman v'yitnaseh v'yitahadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei l'kudesha b'riku le'elamin kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'yimeru
Baruch Hu, the call to worship is on page 178. Please be seated. We're on page 180. In love, you bring light to the earth and its creatures. Your goodness renews the creation each day. Infinite, varied, and rich are your works, divine artist. All of them are wrought with wisdom. The whole earth is teeming with life, awestruck by the universe, work of your hands. Let all life bless you, praise you, and celebrate the beauty of your lights. May you shine a new light upon Zion, and may we soon be privileged to share in that light. Baruch atah Adonai Yotzer HaMeorot. Our praise to you, Adonai, creator of the cosmic lights. Page 182. Love abundant, love unstinting. Our God, you have enfolded us in love, tender compassion beyond all bounds, your precious gift. Our fathers and mothers gave you their trust, and you gave them Torah, laws by which to live. For their sake, teach us as well. Grace us with your guidance. Loving Father, merciful Mother of us all, grant us clear understanding that we may listen, learn, and teach, preserve, practice, and fulfill with love every lesson of your Torah. May learning your Torah open up our eyes. May our hearts embrace your mitzvot. We continue now on page 186 for Shema.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem, Kivod Malchuto, Leolam Va'ed.
We continue on page 188.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם המזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
191.
למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים ללכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Page 194. From Egypt you redeemed us, Adonai, our God, and from the slave house you set us free. For this the people who felt your love exalted you, and the ones you found precious sang hymns of praise, blessings, and thanks. To the living God who reigns forever, high and exalted, inspiring wonder, who humbles the proud and raises the lowly, who frees the captive, redeems the oppressed, and sustains the poor. God responds to the cry of our people, their prayer in time of need. Sing praise to God Most High, most blessed source of blessing, as Moses, Miriam, and all Israel sang this joyous song to you. Page 196.
מי כמוך באלים, אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות עושה פלא. שירה חדשה שיבחו גאולים, לשמך שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו, והמליכו ואמרו, אדוני מלוך לעולם ועד. Yisrael. Kuma, Kuma, Be'ezrat, Be'ezrat Yisrael, Ufedeh Chineomecha Yehuda v'Yisrael Kol aleinu Kol aleinu Kol aleinu Adonai Tzevaot Shemo Kadosh Yisrael Baruch Atah Adonai
Malchum Baruch Shemo.
Ga'al Yisrael.
Amen. Please rise as you are able. We turn now to page 200 for the Amidah.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Ve'Elohei Avoteinu ve'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka ve'Elohei Leah ve'Rachel Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor ve'Hadorah El Elyon Gomer Chasadim Tovim Ve'Koneh HaKol Ve'Zocher Chasevot ve'Imahot Umevi Geula Livnei V'nehem Leman Shemo Be'ahava
202.
Zochreinu l'chaim, melech chafetz b'chaim, v'chodveinu b'sefer ha'chaim, l'manecha Elohim chaim, melech ozer u'moshiach Umagen Baruch Atah Adonai
Malchum Baruch Shemo.
Magen Avraham Ve'ezrat Sarah
Amen. 204.
Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Michayeh HaKol Atah Rav Lehoshia Morid Hatan Mechakeh Chaim B'Chesed Mechayeh HaKol Rachamim Rabim Samach Noflim Rafeh Cholim Umatir מסורים ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר מי כמוך בגבורות ומי דומה לך מלך נעמית ומחיה ומצליח ישוע מי כמוך אל הרחמים זוכר יצוריו לחיים זוכר יצוריו לחיים ורחמים לחיים ורחמים ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל ברוך אתה אדוני
מלכום ברוך שמו
מחיי הכל
We turn to page 208. Our sovereign, God of pardon and forgiveness, let these words of sanctity ascend to you. You may be seated. We are about to approach Unitanet Tokef, the prayer that evokes the imagery of God sitting at a book of our lives, keeping track of all that we do, giving us merits and demerits, determining who will live, who will die, and in what way. A reminder that it is a powerful metaphor, but a metaphor nonetheless. This is not how we live our lives. And while each of our actions is important, it is not what will be used to determine the length of our days. Not this year. Page 208.
ונתנת תוקף קדושת היום כי הוא נורא היום ובו תנשא מלכותך וייכון בחסד כיסאך ותשב עליו באמת ותשב עליו באמת. אמת כי אתה הוא דיין ויודע וידע ועד וכותב וחותם וסופר ומונה ותזכור את כל הנשכחות ותפתח את ספר הזיכרונות ומעליו יקרא וכל תם יד כל אדם בו ובשופר גדול ייתקע וכל דממה דקה יישמע ומלאכים יחפזו וכילורי ידי יאחזו וכל דממה דקה יישמע כל דממה דקה יישמע ומלאכים יחפזו וכילורי ידי יאחזו ומלאכים יחפזו וכילורי ידי יאחזו ובשופר גדול ייתקע וכל דממה דקה יישמע ומלאכים יחפזו וכילורי ידע יוחזו ומלאכים יחפזו והילו ידע יוחזו ויאמרו הנה יום הדין לבכות מרום בדין כי לא יזכו ונכבדין וכל באי עולם יעברו לפניך כבני מרום כבקרת רועה עדרו מעביר צונו תחת שבטו כן תביא ותספור ותמנה ותפקוד נפש כל חי ותקטור קצבה לכל בריאה ותכתוב את גזר דינם ובשופר גדול ייתקע וקול דממה דקה יישמע ומלאכים יחפזו וכי לא ידע יוחזו ובשופר גדול ייתקע וקול דממה דקה יישמע ומלאכים יחפזו וכי לא ידע יוחזו בראש השנה ייכתבון וביום צום כיפור יירתמון בראש השנה ייכתבון וביום צום כיפור ייחתמון בראש השנה ייכתבון וביום צום כיפור ייחתמון כמה יעברו וכמה יבראו בראש השנה ייכתבו וביום צום כיפור ייחתמון בראש השנה ייכתבון וביום צום כיפור ייחתמון מי יחיה ומי ימות מי וקיצור ומי לא וקיצור מי באש ומי במים מי בחרב ומי בחיה מי ברב ומי בצמא מי ברש ומי במגפה מי בחניקה ומי sikilo Uteshuva utefila utsedaka Maviarin et roha hagezera.
On Rosh Hashanah, this is written. On the fast of Yom Kippur, this is sealed. How many will pass away from this world? How many will be born into it? Who will live and who will die? Who will reach the ripeness of age, and who will be taken before their time? Who by fire and who by water? Who by war and who by beast? Who by famine and who by drought? Who by earthquake and who by plague? Who by strangling and who by stoning? Who will rest and who will wander? Who will be tranquil and who will be troubled? Who will be calm and who tormented? Who will live in poverty and who in prosperity? Who will be humbled and who exalted? We continue on page 214.
Uteshuva utefila utsedaka ma'avirin et roha hagezera.
We turn now to page 218. Please rise as you are able for Kedusha.
Nikadesh, Nikadesh, Nikadesh et shimecha ba'olam, Nikadesh et shimecha ba'olam, kishem shemakdishim oto bishmei marom. Kakatuv al-yad neviecha v'karazeh hilzeh ve'amar. Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh Adonai Tzevot Milol haaretz kivodo Adir, Adirenu Adir, Adirenu, Adonai, Adonai, Adonenu. Madir, Madir, Shimecha, Mechoretz. Baruch, Kevod Adonai, Mimekomo. Echad hu Eloheinu, hu Avinu, hu Malkeinu, hu Mashmienu, v'hu Yashmienu, v'hu Yashmienu, v'rachamim le'nei kol chai. Ani Adonai Elohechem. ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהיך ציון לדור ודור, הללויה.
You may be seated. We continue on page 232. Our God and God of the generations before us, may a memory of us ascend and come before you. May it be heard and seen by you, winning your favor and reaching your awareness. Together with the memory of our ancestors, the memory of your sacred city, Jerusalem, and the memory of your people, the family of Israel, may we be remembered for safety, well-being, and favor, for love and compassion, for life and for peace on this day of atonement. Eternal our God, remember us. Amen.
Amen.
Be mindful of us. Amen.
Amen.
And redeem us for a life of goodness and blessing. And we say, Amen. Favor us with words of deliverance and mercy. Show us to the depth of your care. God, we await your redemption, for you reign with grace and compassion. Page 235. A teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. Your fellow human being is a mirror for you. If there is love and compassion in your soul, you will see the good in others. If you see a blemish in another, it is your own imperfection you encounter. Take careful note of the flaws you perceive in others. This is a lesson for you. They are your own flaws set before you, a reminder of your own spiritual work. Page 241. Modim anachnu lach, the patience of ordinary things. It is a kind of love, is it not? How the cup holds the tea, how the chair stands sturdy and foursquare, how the floor receives the bottom of shoes or toes, how soles of feet know where they're supposed to be. I've been thinking about the patience of ordinary things, how clothes wait respectfully in closets, and soap dries quietly in the dish, and towels drink the wet from the skin of the back, and the lovely repetition of stairs. And what is more generous than a window? We continue on page 246.
Sim shalom, sim shalom, sim shalom, tova uveracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu. Ve'akol Yisrael amecha, sim shalom, sim shalom. Baruchenu Avinu, kulanu kechad be'or panecha, ki be'or panecha natat lanu Adonai Eloheinu Torat chayim ve'ahavat chesed u'tzedakah u'veracha ve'rachamim ve'chayim ve'shalom וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל ואת כל העמים מרוב עוז ושלום שים שלום שים שלום שים שלום טובה וברכה חן וחסד ורחמים עלינו ועל כל יושבי תבל שים שלום שים שלום ברוך אתה אדוני
מלכום ברוך שמו
עושה השלום שלום שים שלום.
We take a moment for our own private prayers and meditations, those in your hearts or those on the page. When we come back together, we will be on page 250.
עושה שלום במרומה הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומה עושה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. יעשה שלום שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל יעשה שלום שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל.
A producer of a certain movie about the Holocaust stood before an audience and shared this story. They had gotten one of the shots they needed on location in Poland the day before, but the director The director wanted snow. And so the producer tried to think about how were they going to make enough snow for the director, for the scene, the way that he wanted it. And wouldn't you know, it snowed. And this producer made it seem as though that snow, well, it was a miracle. Someone must have been paying attention and listening to that very special director's need for snow. There's a certain narrowness to this perspective, that God should somehow pay attention to his needs, to those of a producer or a director or a very specific movie, but not those of the 6 million Jews and 3 million political dissidents, homosexual people, Romani, disabled people, prisoners of war, and on and on. And those were only casualties of the Holocaust. But no, it's a miracle when the snow appears. Pardon me for being a little glib. As I mentioned last night, there are enough horrific events to keep us busy listing them for a very, very long time. But our producer, well, he was focused on his personal crisis. It was all-consuming to him. For after all, when we encounter trouble in our own lives, the rest of history recedes into the background as well. Now, it is true, all of us experience pain. And I make it a point to never compare pain, to never say, well, the loss of this person was more significant than the loss of that person, or what you're going through doesn't compare to someone else's going through, because comparisons are not relevant when we are suffering. All suffering is significant. I think a lot about suffering these days. There is so much pain in the world. So much needless misery. Buddha is often quoted as saying that life is suffering, but more to the point, there is no way to live a life free of suffering. So what then is the place of God? And why pray if we know that we will suffer, that those we care about will suffer, indeed, that everyone will suffer anyway? This is difficult stuff to think about, to consider, more than I could resolve through my own personal thinking alone, and more than I will resolve certainly today. But I'm going to make an effort, and I'm going to do some intense name-dropping of Jewish thinkers and philosophers while we consider this question. If, as Elie Wiesel said in Legends of Our Time, the survivors of the Holocaust are aware of the fact that God's presence at Treblinka or Majdanek, or for that matter, God's absence, poses a problem which will remain forever insoluble. What do we do then? Well, the traditional Jewish approach, found even today in some circles, is that any suffering can come only from the one who gave it, which is God, that puts the power and the onus in God's hands and questions in ours. In their rabbinic anthology, Claude Montefiore and Herbert Lowe share, the rabbinic attitude towards suffering is one of humble resignation to the will of God, the convinced faith in a future life of blessedness and happiness enabled the rabbis to face sufferings, not indeed for the most part with pleasure, but with fortitude, and even sometimes with joy, because they were regarded as sure passports to heaven, meaning that because they suffered on earth, they thought that in an olam haba, in the world to come, that there would be some reward for them. But according to Viktor Frankl, Montefiore and Lowe and other contemporary commentators saw these explanations for the existence of suffering as inadequate. The idea that one suffers here as a test of faith or that God delivers hardship and suffering on individuals and society for atonement of sin, or that suffering here on earth is a prerequisite for a good afterlife, casts God as spiteful and vengeful. A God who delivers hardship and suffering for reasons we are not to question makes it hard to see God as loving and caring. I think that you and I would also find these arguments lacking. But another rabbinic source, Talmud Sanhedrin 46b, takes a different approach. Rabbi Meir said, when a human suffers, what expression does the Shekhinah use? The Shekhinah is the closest, most dwelling of God, the female aspect of God that is closest to humanity. So what expression then does the Shekhinah use? My head is too heavy for me. My arm is too heavy for me. And if God is so grieved over the blood of the wicked that is shed, how much more so, kal v'chomer, over the blood of the righteous? That is to say, that when anyone suffers, the wicked, all the way to the righteous, that God suffers as well. The perspective taken by Harold Kushner in When Bad Things Happen to Good People. If God is a God of justice and not a God of power, then God can still be on our side when bad things happen to us. God can know that we are good and honest people who deserve better. Our misfortunes are none of God's doing. And so we can turn to God for help. We will turn to God not to be judged or forgiven, not to be rewarded or punished, but to be strengthened and comforted. In this perspective, we are responsible for our own lives. We are responsible for the lives of others, and God stands with us. God doesn't inflict, but God endures with us. In her book, Bad Things Happen, Rachel Adler talks about Emmanuel Levinas. He says, the only moral response we can make to suffering is to do all that we can to alleviate it. In fact, only in being present to the suffering of other people do we become fully human. So I want to stop there for a moment. In this reading, it is not the suffering that makes us human, but the awareness of the suffering of others. It puts us in the position that Kushner aligns with God. It is upon us to relieve suffering wherever the ravaged face of the other lifts itself to yours. Even when we ourselves are suffering, we can leave ourselves open to compassion and to hope by the practice of lament and by a life of active caring. Rabbi David Wolpe in Los Angeles says that we need to see ourselves as more than just stuff. We have to realize that there is, in addition to all the physical needs of human being, there is a deep hunger in people to believe that they are attached to something greater than themselves. And he quotes William James, "The great use of life is to spend it on something that outlasts us." Finally, Ronald Modras, post-Holocaust Jewish and Christian, in his post-Holocaust Jewish and Christian theologies of history, says that if we take seriously that our beliefs and values are fundamental to what we are, we will change the world. We will not just wait for things to get better. Our failures as human beings can lead us to do terrible things. We cannot expect, as if we were 5-year-olds, that God will show up and fix everything. The idea that God is out there, ready to judge and fix and punish entire nations makes no sense after the Holocaust. If when you feel suffering upon yourself, faith means that you will become a better human being, then faith will work. But to look at others and expect them to be you, and feel your faith, and love God as you do because you feel that you are right, this is preposterous. All of this is to say that we suffer, but it is not we alone who suffer. Everyone suffers. And when we can acknowledge that, when out of our suffering we see the true humanity, the dignity of other people, then, and only then, have we made ourselves in the image of God, God who is witness, God who suffers with us. We through the work of our hands, through the work of our votes, we also have the power to alleviate suffering. In that power is not only the divine image, but also the divine mandate and the divine work. So where is God? God is here. And God is in you. God is in your hands and in your suffering and in your willingness to remove some of the suffering from someone else. God is where you make God, because God is where you make it better. We continue our service on page 252 with Avinu Malkeinu. Please rise as you are able.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kolenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Chamol aleinu, ve'al aleinu, ve'tapenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Kale dever, v'cherev v'rav me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Kale kol tzar u'mastin me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu m'sefer chaim tovim. Avinu Malkeinu, chadesh aleinu, chadesh aleinu, shana tova. Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Chadesh aleinu, shana tova. Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Koleinu, Shema Koleinu, Shema Koleinu.
Please read with me. Avinu Malkeinu, let our hands overflow with your blessings. Avinu Malkeinu, let our eyes behold the dawn of redemption. Avinu Malkeinu, we pray, do not turn us away from you with nothing. Avinu Malkeinu, welcome our prayer with love, accept and embrace it. Avinu Malkeinu, act towards us as befits your name. Avinu Malkeinu, act for your sake, if not for ours. Avinu Malkeinu, you alone are our sovereign. Avinu Malkeinu, let the gates of heaven be open to our prayer. Avinu Malkeinu, hear our voice, treat us with tender compassion. Avinu Malkeinu, almighty and merciful, answer us with grace, for our deeds are wanting. Save us through acts of justice and love.
Avinu Malkeinu,
Avinu Malkeinu,
Avinu Malkeinu,
Avinu Malkeinu,
Avinu Malkeinu,
Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu v'aneinu, ki ein banu ma'asim, aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed, aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed, ve'oshienu. Avinu Malkeinu,
Avinu Malkeinu,
Avinu Malkeinu,
Avinu Malkeinu,
Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu v'aneinu, ki ein banu ma'asim.
Please remain standing as you are able as we turn to page 256.
Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum v'Chanun, Erech Apayim v'Rav Chesed v'Emet, Notze Chesed la'alafim, Nose Avon v'Fesha, v'Chata'a v'Nakeh. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum v'Chanun, Erech Apayim v'Rav Chesed v'Emet, Notze Chesed la'alafim, Nose Avon v'Fesha, v'Chata'a v'Nakeh. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum v'Chanun, Erech Apayim v'Rav Chesed v'Emet, Notze Chesed la'alafim, Nose Avon v'Fesha, v'Chata'a v'Nakeh. Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah, Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah, Udevar Adonai miYerushalayim, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah, Le'amo Yisrael mikdushato, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh v'Nora Shemo. Gadelu l'Adonai iti, u'neramim Shemo yachtov.
You may be seated. Just a second. Our Torah readings today begin on page 266.
Yamdu Yosef ben Moshe, Yosef ben Moshe, Shoshana bat Nechum v'Simcha. Now welcoming Stephen Shauna Brown, chanting Torah Noah Brown.
Baruch hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach li'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Atem nitzavim hayom kulachem lifnei Adonai Elohechem Rashechem shivtechem ziknechem Rashot rechem kol ish Yisrael tapachem Tapachem, Nishechem, V'gerecha, Asher, V'kerev, Mechanecha, Machotev, Otsecha, Ad Shoev, Memecha, La'avracha, Bivrit, Adonai Elohecha uvalato asher Adonai Elohecha korit imcha hayom.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam b'tachenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Talmuna Malka Beria bat Kasriel, Chana Davida bat Moshe Gedalia vel Malka Beria, Miriam Shoshana bat Moshe Gedalia vel Malka Beria. Now welcoming Michelle, Rachel, and Melanie Gilbert, chanting Torah Adam Gilbert.
Baruch hu et Adonai HaBarach.
Baruch Adonai HaBarach l'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaBarach l'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Amen.
למען הקימותך היום לא לעם, והוא יהיה לך לאלוהים כאשר דבר לך, וכאשר נשבע לאבותיך, לאברהם, ליצחק וליעקב, ולא אתים לכם אנוכי כורת את הברית הזאת ואת הלילה הזאת, כי את אשר ישנו פה עמנו עומד היום לפני אדוני אלוהינו, ואת אשר איננו פה עמנו היום.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam natan b'tohenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Yamdu Aharon ben Reuven Ashira bat Michael. Now welcoming Jeffrey and Aldine Rostolder, chanting Torah Elia Rostolder.
Perfect.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
V'chaya ki yavo alecha kol hadivarim ha'ele haberacha v'chakilala asher natati lefanecha v'chashevota al levavecha b'chol hagoyim asher chidichacha Adonai Elohecha Shama V'shavta ad Adonai Elohecha V'shamata v'kolo kechol Asher Anochi mitzavecha hayom Ata uvanecha B'chol levavecha u'b'chol nafshecha V'shav Adonai Elohecha et shirutecha v'richamecha v'shav v'kibetzecha mikol ha'amim asher hefitzecha Adonai Elohecha Shama
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Natan Lanu Torah Emet V'chayei Olam Nata B'tochenu Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Ya'amdu Aharon Itan ben Rivka Sarah, Dov Yoel ben Rivka Sarah, Ari Shalom ben Rivka Sarah. Now welcoming Andrew, Alex, and Ari McVeigh, chanting Torah, Rebecca McVeigh.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Im yeh nidachacha b'ktzei hashamayim misham yikabetzecha Adonai Elohecha umisham yikachecha ve'eviacha Adonai Elohecha el haaretz Asher yarshu avotecha v'rishta v'hitivcha v'yirbecha me'avotecha umal Adonai Elohecha et levavecha ve'et levav zarecha le'ahava et Adonai Elohecha V'chol levavecha u'v'chol nafshecha leman chayecha.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Natan Lanu Torah Emet V'chayei Olam Nata B'tochenu Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Ya'amdu Gershon Yisrael ben Yitzchak Meir v'Chaya Leah Sarah Pascha bat Chaim v'Nemcha Reuben Daniel ben Geron Yisrael v'Sarah Pasha. Now welcoming Gary, Cindy, and Adam Buckhalter, chanting Torah, Logan Buckhalter.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Ki hamitzvah hazot asher anochi mitzavecha hayom lo nifleti mimcha velo rechoka hi lo vashamayim hi lemor mi ya'ale lanu hashamayma v'yikache halanu v'yashmienu ota v'na'asena v'lo me'ever layam hi lemor mi ya'avar lanu el ever hayam v'yikache halanu v'yashmienu ota v'na'asena ki karov elecha hadavar me'od b'ficha u'vilvavecha la'asoto.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chaye olam nata betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Ta'amod, Shoshana Bat Reuben, Shoshana Dina. Now welcoming Kelly Benadi, chanting Torah, John Dowd.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamivorach.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai hamivorach le'olam vayed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol amim, vet natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Re'eh natati lefanecha hayom et hachayim ve'et hatov ve'et hamavet ve'et hara asher anochi mitzavecha hayom lahava et Adonai Elohecha lalechet b'derachav v'lishmor mitzvotav v'chukotav u'mishpatav v'chayita v'ravita u'verachecha Adonai Elohecha ba'aretz asher ata v'shama l'rishta ve'im yifne levavecha v'lo tishma v'nidachta v'hishtachavita le'elohim acherim va'avadetam.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chaye olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Ya'amod, Baruch ben Hillel, Verifka, Ruchel, Davida, Sasha, Bat Baruch, Vigital. Now welcoming Daryl and Samantha Spencer, chanting Torah, Gail Spencer.
Berechu Adonai Amvarach. Baruch Adonai Amvarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol hamnin v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Higadeti lachem hayom, ki avo tovedun, lo ta'arichun yamim al adama, asher ata over et hayarden, lavo shama l'rishta. Haidoti vahem hayom, et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, hachayim ve'hamavet natati lefanecha, habaracha ve'hakalala, וכפרכת בחיים, למען תחיה אתה וזרעך, לאהבת את אדוני אלוהיך, לשמוע בקולו ולדבקו, כי הוא חייך ואורך ימיך, לשבת על האדמה, אשר נשבע אדוני לאבותיך, לאברהם, ליצחק וליעקב, לתת להם.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam notah b'sochenu, Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Yasher koach to everyone who read and who blessed Torah. Please rise as you are able as we lift the Sefer Torah.
Zota Torah sesha Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai al yad Moshe. Yala la 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 la, yala la la la, yala la 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 la, yala la 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 la. I got la la la. Yeah, sorry. La, ya la 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 la, ya la la. Ya la la la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la.
Please remain standing as you are able. If you have a non-Jewish spouse or partner who has left the room for some reason, invite them to come back into the room. And if you have a non-Jewish spouse or partner who is in the room, grab their hand. This part is for them. It is for you. Today, more than ever, we recognize how special it is for someone to share a life when the beliefs, customs, and traditions of the faith tradition may be foreign to them. You are a diverse group of people, ethnically, politically, religiously. Some of you are living a Jewish life in almost every respect, and some of you are devoutly committed to another faith tradition. Some of you do not define yourselves as religious at all. You fall at points along this spectrum, and we acknowledge and respect your diversity. What we want to thank you for today is your decision to stand with the Jewish people by becoming part of our congregation and the love and support that you give to your Jewish partner and family. We want to offer our deepest thanks to those of you who are parents and who are raising your children as Jews with all our hearts. We want to thank you for your generosity and strength of spirit in making this gift to the Jewish people. You have our love and our respect, and there is no better time to say thank you than on this most important day of the Jewish year. You are the moms and the dads, the partners who usually schlep to Hebrew school, this year ensuring that the log on and the Zoom participation are working well. You take classes, you read Jewish books, and you ask probing questions to deepen your own understanding so that you can make a Jewish home. You invite us, your Jewish counterparts, deeper into our Judaism as well. You Zoom and come to services, even if it feels strange and confusing at first. You get Hebrew songs and prayers stuck in your head, and you stand on the bima and pass the Sefer Torah to your children on the day of their bar or bat mitzvah, having done more than your part to shape them into the young Jewish men and women they are. We know that some of you have made a significant sacrifice for the generous decision you made to raise Jewish children. You may have given up the joys of sharing your own spiritual beliefs and passing your own religious traditions down to your kids. I hope that they and your spouse tell you often how wonderful you are, and that their love and gratitude and our love and gratitude may be some compensation and will bring you joy. Allow me to tell you how wonderful you are and how much I and this congregation and the Jewish people appreciate you. I ask our congregation to honor you now with ancient blessing from the Torah. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Ye'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. May God's countenance shine upon you and be gracious to you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God look up to you, grant you wholeness and peace. You may be seated. And I hope if you have one of those non-Jewish partners or spouses that you took a moment to punctuate that with a nice swack right there. No, with a kiss, swack, good, okay. We are moving into our Haftarah. We are reading from the prophet Isaiah, and this is the section that says, if your fast does not change your behavior, if it does not change who you are, if it does not make you a more righteous person, then don't fast. It's not what God wants. If you hunger, not for food, but for justice, then you're doing the right thing. Not for water, but for equality. This is a fast that should change how we act, how we behave. And Isaiah wants us to know that that indeed is the point. Haftarah begins on page 277.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nebiim tovim v'ratzav divreihem hane'emarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'torah u'v'Moshe avdo u'v'Yisrael amo u'v'nevi'ei ha'emet v'tzedek.
Kera v'garon al kavsho kashofar harim kolecha v'haged le'ami pisham u'veit Yaakov hatotam. Ve'oti yom yom bidroshun ve'ta'at derachai yechbatzun kegoy asher tzedaka asav u'mishpat Elochav lo azav yishaluni mishpatei tzedek kirvat Elohim yechbatzun. Lama tzamnu velo ra'ita hininu nafshenu velo teda ein beyom tovchem timtu chefetz v'cho atzvechem tingoshu ein leriv u'matzah tatsumu v'hakof begrof resha lo tatsumu chayom l'hashmiya b'marom kolchem l'chazeh yeh tzom efarehu Yom anot adam nafsho alakov gadmon rosho v'sak v'efer yatzia alazetik ratzon v'yom ratzon l'Adonai.
Cry from the depth, says God. Do not hold back. Lift up your voice like the shofar. Tell my people their transgression and the house of Jacob their sin. Yes, they seek me daily as though eager to learn my ways, as if they were a nation that does what is right and has not abandoned God's law. They ask of me the right way, eager for God's nearness. They say, why did we fast and you do not see it? We afflict ourselves and you do not know it, because even on your fast day you think only of desire while oppressing all who work for you. Because your fasting is filled with strife and with callous fists you strike. No, your fasting this day will not lift up your voice before heaven. Is this the fast I desire? A day to afflict body and soul? Bowing your head like a reed, covering yourself with sackcloth and ashes? Do you call this a fast, a day worthy of the favor of Adonai? Is not this the fast I desire? To break the bonds of injustice and remove the heavy yoke, to let the oppressed go free and release all those enslaved. Is this not to share your bread with the hungry, and to take the homeless poor into your home? And never to neglect your own flesh and blood. Then shall your light burst forth like the dawn, and your wounds shall quickly heal. Your righteous one leading the way before you, the presence of Adonai guarding you from behind. Then when you call, Adonai will answer, and when you cry, will respond, I am here. If you remove the chains of oppression, the menacing hand, the malicious word, if you offer your compassion to the hungry and satisfy the suffering, then shall your light shine through the darkness and your night become bright as noon. Adonai will guide you always, shake your thirst in parched places, give strength to your bones, and shall be like a well-watered garden, an unfailing spring. From you they will rebuild ancient ruins, lay foundations for ages to come, and you shall be called the one who mends the breach and brings back the streets for dwelling. If you cease to trample Shabbat, stop pursuing your affairs on my holy day. If you call Shabbat a delight, the holy day of Adonai honored, and if you honor God by not doing or speaking of everyday matters, then shall you take pure delight in Adonai. I will lift up your journey on earth to the highest of places and nourish you from the heritage of your father Jacob. Thus spoke Adonai.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, sur kol haolamim, sadik b'kol hadorot, ha'el ha'ne'eman, ha'omer v'yoseh, hamdaber u'mkayem, shekol davarav emet v'tzedek, al ha'torah v'al ha'avodah, v'al hanvi'im, v'al yom ha'kippurim hazeh, Shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu limchila v'lislicha uchapara lechavod ultifaret al kakol Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim lach umvorachim otach yitbarak shimcha b'fi kol chai tamid le'olam va'ed udvarcha emet v'kayam la'ad Baruch atah Adonai Melech mochel v'soleach la'avonotenu v'la'avonot amo beit Yisrael u'ma'avir ashmotenu b'chol shana v'shana melech al kol ha'aretz mekadesh Yisrael v'yom ha'kippurim.
Yasher Koach. I'd like now to invite Harvey Weinberg forward with a very important cameo by Renan Wishler.
Shana Tova. I love movies about football. Which of these is your favorite? The Longest Yard? Not the remake with Adam Sandler, the original with Burt Reynolds. Maybe Rudy. It's about the undersized underdog kid with an enormous heart, humility, and endless drive, who ultimately gets his moment on the field for Notre Dame. And how about Jerry Maguire? where the football legend Tom Cruise comes back for Renee Zellweger, who spoke the memorable words, "You had me at hello," an endearing scene for softies for love stories. I am a softie too, and Cantor Josh had me at shalom when we first met. Cantor, you have inspired me and taught me in the few months we have known each other. I have a soft spot in my heart for Rabbi Alana as well, and I thank my friend and partner Jen Cole and her team for bringing us the rabbi that we needed. Rabbi Alana has led us with compassion throughout this pandemic, engaging with each family that has suffered emotionally or physically. 2/3 of my family contracted the coronavirus. Our hearts dropped when our 1-year-old grandson went to the ER with fever, coughing, low blood oxygen, and congested lungs. I called Rabbi, and she helped me pray, and thank God Jake was running around within days. Thank you, Rabbi, for being there for my family and for many, many others. We're very fortunate to have both Rabbi Lana and Cantor Josh as our leaders. We have been communicating since April that BHSS is here for you. We made the commitment that families that were suffering financially need only pay what they could afford. I can assure you this is happening. To keep our finances in balance, we rely on those who can make an additional contribution to do so. And today is the day for all of us to step up and demonstrate that we believe our Jewish community is important, as it has been for 50 years. I'd like to give you comfort that we're doing all we can to find additional funding sources. We applied for an SBA PPP loan. It was an unnerving process. The online application wanted our ownership structure, but did not have a place for not-for-profits, which we obviously are. When asked for the first owner's name, I asked Iris to type in her name. The application then needed her percent ownership, and Iris asked me, "Now what, Harvey?" I explained that she was one of 340 members, so her ownership share was 1 divided by 340, or 0.3%, and Iris typed that in. The application then asked for the second owner, and Iris gave me a less gentle, "Now what, Harvey?" For the first name, I said, type in B-E-T-H. And for the last name, yes, you guessed it, H-A-V-E-R-I-M. Those two words, Beth Havarim, or more appropriately, Beth Havarim Shir Shalom, represent all the rest of us, as we are indeed owners of this congregation. Iris hit submit and we're on our way. The message here is not just about securing an SBA loan, it's the recognition that each of us is an owner of this congregation. And as I joke with my Catholic friends, we cannot turn to the Pope in Rome for financial help. We need to look within our own four walls. It's been said by some that BHSS is not a giving congregation. I take great exception to that statement, having witnessed several outpourings of generosity. Our sanctuary and school wing were funded by the Kahila campaign that I co-led with Evelyn McGilloway 20 years ago. 3 families pledged $100,000 each. 61 families pledged between $5,000 and $75,000. And there were an additional 81 contributions, including 8 members at $100 and 1 at $50. Every contribution was welcomed, and we raised over $1.5 million. And we thank Andrew McVeigh, son of our educator, and my friends Rebecca and Rod, who contributed $300 from his bar mitzvah gifts. You can be confident that Rebecca is not only teaching your children Hebrew, but Jewish values as well. A decade later, my dear friend Evelyn encouraged us to establish an endowment, and we did that, initially funded by $50,000 raised in an ad journal. Rabbi Mosbacher and I led a campaign to build the endowment, and we raised over $200,000. The endowment has supported the RAC trip and the family retreat for many years, cutting the cost per attendee in half and dramatically growing attendance. Most recently, the endowment is funding a tent for our front lawn, enabling us to gather outdoors as a community. And finally, on Yom Kippur in 2015, I asked members to contribute to the furnishing of the Ulam as it was being completed. 118 members contributed in honor of Iris, whom we thank for her endless love, compassion, and commitment to our community. We raised over $45,000. The Ulam has been a wonderful addition to our facilities, and thanks to all who supported its furnishing. We now see that giving is part of our culture. We built a sanctuary and classrooms. We created a large and vital endowment to support our programming, and we furnished a new social and meeting space. Our call to action this year is different, though. We're working our way through an uncertain and unsettling environment. Brand names we grew up with are gone. Schools and colleges are suffering. Millions of small businesses are teetering or are just gone. While we are a synagogue, we are also a small business with 7 full-time staff and 12 part-time teachers. We need to generate cash from dues, fees, and contributions to cover a $1.2 million expense base every year. Your response to this high holiday appeal is as important as the 3 capital campaigns that I described, not because of the amount of money we raise, but because your participation demonstrates that we are united as a congregation to ensure that Jewish communities like ours thrive for decades to come. To me, having a synagogue as a safe haven for Jews to pray, to gather socially, and to educate our children is simply essential. We're fortunate to have a rainy day fund to help us get through times like this, but my intuition is it will keep raining for quite a while. I ask you with all my heart to consider whether sustaining and growing this Jewish community is important for you and for your family. If yes, now is the time to show your support. My father's words to me, "Give until it hurts," still ring in my ears. But Rabbi Alana's words to me, "Give until it heals," ring even clearer. So together, let's bring healing and health to each of our families and all others in our community. Every dollar heals, whether you're able to contribute $18, $180, or $1,800. When I mentioned to my friend Manal Wishler that I was giving this appeal, we bantered back and forth about the highest percentage of members contributing that we had achieved individually or in tandem over our many appeals. Renan was president and treasurer of the synagogue and has been my public and private partner on numerous efforts to make BHSS a better place. I'll step aside for a moment and give the mic to Renan.
Thank you, Harvey. As the old-timers know, you and I have an ongoing effort to see who can get more members to participate in this appeal. And because our goal has always been based on participation, it is based on the percentage. We agreed that the best either of us have ever done was 53%. That is dismal. Not only do we want to beat that percentage this year, I want you to be able to smash our record. And the Wishler family is willing to give every congregant some added incentive. The Wishler family will donate $10 for each family that contributes to this appeal. And if we top the 53%, then we're going to raise our match to $18 per family. Guess what, Harvey? The Weinberg family will be doing the same. So now we have a match of $20 per family, and when we break the record, it's going to be $36 per family. It'll be our pleasures to write the match of $36 per family and write these checks to BHSS. And should there be other families able and willing to join in our match, I promise no one's going to turn you away. Before I pass the mic back to Harvey, I wish you all a safe and healthy Shana Tova.
Thanks for deciding my contribution this year, Renan. I really appreciate that, buddy. I owe you one. We have not charged for high holiday tickets this year for members, guests, as well as non-member guests. Given our use of Zoom and streaming, that would have been impractical, but also runs against our deep desire to keep our doors open to all who want to be part of our community on these high holidays and thereafter. Yet, our foregone revenue from ticket sales is large. I'm asking all who are participating as guests to make a significant donation. And I thank all of our guests for being with us today. To those members who have not completed their membership and school paperwork, please call Iris tomorrow. There's still time to enroll in school, and we will continue to offer dues accommodations. And even if you've told Iris that you will not return this year, Our doors are open and our phones are working, so please reconsider and call Iris tomorrow. All members should have a contribution card in your mailbox today. I ask all of you, members and guests, to make a note now to call Iris tomorrow and make your pledge. Be safe, be well, be generous, and have a happy, healthy New Year. And with a final Zoom hug for Phil Moss, Eddie Safe, Evelyn McGilloway, and Barbara Burkhardt, who are my mentors, I wish everyone a Shana Tova.
Please rise as you are able. We're on page 291 to return the Sefer Torah to the Ark.
למחזיקים בה ותומכך מאושר ותומכך מאושר
Please remain standing as you are able. Before we confess our communal wrongdoings, we take a moment to recognize what we got right this year. For the mitzvah we have done when we held back a sharp and critical tongue. For the mitzvah we have done when we gave a compliment and a hug. For the mitzvah we have done when we gave charity to causes that needed our help. For the mitzvah we have done when we helped strangers or friends in need. For the mitzvah we have done for giving unconditional love. For the mitzvah we have done when we put the needs of the community ahead of our individual needs. For the mitzvah we have done when we thought well of ourselves in situations where we used to shame ourselves. For the mitzvah we have done when we give loving attention to children. For the mitzvah we have done when we took action for the sake of tikkun olam, for the repair of the world. For the mitzvah we have done when we opened our homes in hospitality to guests. For the mitzvah we have done when we chose not to use products which harm the environment. For the mitzvah we have done when we took action in the face of hopelessness. For the mitzvah we have done when we acted or spoke out in the face of racism, sexism, and homophobia, and acted as an ally to those who face discrimination. For the mitzvah we have done when we resisted addictive use of alcohol, drugs, food, or sex, and instead acted in loving and responsible ways towards our bodies. We are on page 292. We stand in humility, conscious of our failings. Shema kolenu, Adonai, hear our call. True sacrifice to God is a penitent spirit. You treasure a crushed and repentant heart, for you are close to the brokenhearted, and you give strength to a suffering soul. You are the healer of shattered hearts. You are the one who binds up their wounds. For thus says the high and exalted one who lives forever, whose name is holy. I dwell in a high and holy place, but also with the downcast and lowly, to bring new life to despondent souls, to restore and revive repentant hearts. Return now, Israel, to Adonai your God, for you have fallen because of your sin. Take words with you and return to God. Ask the Eternal, forgive what is wrong, accept what is good. We stand in humility, conscious of our failings. We set before you the wrongs we have done. We trust in your compassion, for you know who we are. Shema kolenu, Adonai, hear our call. We continue on page 296.
Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, tavo lefanecha tefilatenu, ve'al titala מתחינתנו שאין אנחנו עזפנים וקשי עורף לומר לפניך Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu Tzadikim anachnu Velo fashanu Ava Anachnu chatanu Avinu Parshanu. Ay 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 Ashamnu Magadnu Gazalnu Dibarnu Dofi Ay 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 Evinu Vehirshanu Zadnu Chamasnu Tafalnu shaker Ay 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 Yahatznu ra Kizavnu Latznu Maradnu
Nihatnu,
Saranu,
Zaranu,
Avinu,
Avinu,
Pashanu,
Pashanu,
Saranu,
Zaranu,
Kishinu Oref.
Kishinu Horef,
Ay, 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 Rashanu,
Rashanu,
Shichatanu,
Shichatnu,
Tiavnu,
Tihavnu,
Ta'inu,
Tahinu,
Titavnu.
Titavnu. Page 300. For these sins, our God, we ask forgiveness. Please read with me. The ways we have wronged you under duress and by choice, and harm we have caused in your world consciously and unconsciously. The ways we have wronged you through our thoughtlessness, and harm we have caused in your world through impulsive acts of malice. The ways we have wronged you by abusing power, and harms we have caused in your world through disrespect to parents and teachers. Page 302. The ways we have wronged you by giving in to our hostile impulses, and harm we have caused in your world through inflexibility and stubbornness. The ways we have wronged you through lies and deceit, and harm we have caused in your world by making light of serious matters. The ways we have wronged you in our routine conversations, and the harm we have caused in your world through envy. For all these failures of judgment and will, God of forgiveness, forgive us, pardon us, lead us to atonement.
Ve'am kulam Eloha selichot, selach lanu, mechal lanu, kapelanu. Ve'am kulam Eloha selichot, selach lanu, mechal lanu, selach lanu, mechal lanu, kapelanu.
Page 304. The ways we have wronged you openly and secretly, and harm we have caused in your world by hating without cause. The ways we have wronged you by losing self-control, and harm we have caused in your world through consumption of food and drink. The ways we have wronged you through sexual immorality, and harm we have caused in your world by hardening our hearts. The ways we have wronged you through greed and exploitation, and harm we have caused in your world through dishonesty and business. Page 306. The ways we have wronged you through our innermost thoughts, and harm we have caused in your world through gossip and rumor. The ways we have wronged you by offering or accepting bribes, and harm we have caused in your world by profaning your name in public. For all these failures of judgment and will, God of forgiveness, forgive us, pardon us, lead us to atonement.
Ve'al kulam Eloha slichot, slach lanu, mechal lanu, kapelanu. Ve'al kulam Eloha slichot, slach lanu, mechal lanu, slach lanu, mechal lanu, kapelanu.
We continue with private confessions through page 309. When you have finished, you may be seated.
כי אנו עמך ואתה אלוהינו, אנו פניך ואתה אבינו, אנו עבדיך ואתה אדוננו, אנו קהלך ואתה חלקנו, אנו נחלתך ואתה גורלנו, אנו צונך ואתה רוענו, אנו חמך ואתה נוטרנו, אנו פעולתך ואתה יוצרנו, אנו רחייתך ואתה דודנו, אנו גאולתך ואתה קרובנו, אוי אנו עמך ואתה מלכנו, אנו מאמירך ואתה מאמירנו.
We invite Jen Cole to say a few words.
To say that the last few months have been difficult would be an understatement. COVID-19 has wreaked havoc. It has threatened us not just physically, but socially, emotionally, financially, and countless other ways. It has forced us to personally reimagine our relationships in socially distant ways, and it has challenged our schools, workplaces, and other institutions to adapt and pivot to find new ways to remain relevant, all amidst a backdrop of ever-changing rules. Our faith communities are perhaps amongst the hardest hit. We live in a world where membership to brick-and-mortar organizations has declined sharply, especially given alternatives that require less money, time, and commitment. With the prevailing consumer mindset, marketing synagogue membership was difficult enough before a virus came along and rendered many of the perks of belonging difficult, if not impossible, to provide. Clergy, synagogue professionals, and lay leaders are now just not having to tackle the question, why join, but also why stay. I recently came across some thoughts from Rabbi Paul Kipnis in response to the question, why belong to a synagogue? He cited many reasons, among them community, Torah, learning, social justice, tradition. He adds, being part of a community is like ensuring that your room is still there, even if you go away to college. You can always come home. Being part of a community teaches future generations that being a Jew matters, even if you're not a power user of the synagogue at this moment. When our family joined Beth Havarim before it merged to become BHSS, it was exclusively to provide our children with Jewish education. My plan was simple: drop them off at Hebrew school, peruse Kohl's or Borders, grab some takeout for dinner, and head home. Throw in a handful of services here and there, maybe a Purim carnival, and we were good. I already had an overscheduled life with family and friends and more than enough on my proverbial plate. I didn't think I had time to enroll in a parenting class or anticipate how thoroughly I would enjoy meeting other parents and sharing our experiences. I didn't think I had time to learn alongside my kids in family school or realize how being together would not just enrich our educational experience, but deepen our relationships. I didn't know I would participate and ultimately lead a Miriam Seder. In fact, I had never heard of such a thing. I didn't think I had time for board meetings or know how much I would enjoy celebrating with our B'nai Mitzvah families while presenting the congregational gift. I didn't think I had time to join a book club where we read all kinds of interesting spiritual journeys and shared bits and pieces of our own, which were every bit as fascinating as those contained in the unsigned memoirs. I didn't see how Shabbat could fit into our busy lives, or how we would grow to love the taste of Zadie's challah and the warmth of the lit candles, even if we were just squeezing it in between basketball and piano lessons and birthday parties. I didn't know how moved I could be by the rabbi's sermon or the cantor's song or the touch of someone's hand during the Mishaberach. I didn't know that when our family faced crisis, some of the first phone calls I would make would be to clergy, and some of those first ones I received would be from fellow members. I didn't know those fellow members would become my friends, and I didn't know what a difference it would make when they came to our home during Shiva and embraced us during profound loss. I was aware then of the financial commitment, the dues, the tuition, the school fees, etc., but I didn't know how easy it would be here at Beth Havarim Shir Shalom to get my money's worth. I will continue to argue that synagogue membership is a worthwhile investment. That said, I can understand how my argument becomes harder to prove when we're in a pandemic. As Rabbi Nicole Guzik writes, when we're forced to be separated, the choice of opting out of community becomes tempting. Not seeing one another understandably dissolves some of the attachment that comes with being physically present. She warns, though, that if enough people opt out, the Jewish world may never look the same. Taking a break is not without consequences. She continues, but when the temptation leads us away from strengthening the Jewish spirit, that is the exact moment when we should sprint in the opposite direction. I, for one, am ready to run, and I join you to run along with me. It's true. I get it. It's harder to feel the connection when we're staring at a computer screen. It's harder to feel welcomed and comforted by a smile when it's covered up by a mask. It's hard not to think our communities aren't doing enough because we've been deprived of so much for so long with no definitive end in sight. I know in these days of uncertainty, it may indeed be challenging to achieve the so-called bang for our buck, but I, for one, I'm opting in because I want the Jewish world to look the same, or dare I say, even more vibrant when the dust settles and we're able to re-enter our sanctuaries, classrooms, and social halls more freely. I want my room to still be there when we all come home. I invite you to join me. I encourage you to opt in, and I'm grateful to those of you who already have. Shana Tova.
Thank you, Jen. A few announcements. I want to thank all of those who've been involved in making these services possible, to Bob Heil and Kyle Dubiel. Thanks to David Schlossberg, our pianist, the choir, and Al Levine for coordinating all of their recordings, to Iris, Michelle, Roberto, and Rebecca for all of their hard work. Of course, for Cantor Finkel.
And our incredible rabbi.
Oh, very kind, very kind. The schedule for the rest of the day, from 12 to 1:30 p.m., we will be accepting your donations for your in-person drive-up food donation. At 1 p.m., we will Zoom the healing services. At 2 p.m., there will be family services back streaming. At 2 to 3 p.m., there will be a Zoom study session with Amy Littman and Jonathan Theodore. At 3:30, we will have Yizkor. 4:30, Mincha. 6:30, Ne'ilah. You know that Sukkot is right around the services, right around the corner, so please keep your eyes out for those services, their times, and how they will be presented. And please, call Iris tomorrow, like Harvey said. Finally, we turn now to page 318. Cantor?
תחמצנו, היום תברכנו, היום תגדלנו, אמן, אמן, אמן. היום תדרשנו לטובה, ונאמר אמן. היום תחדש עלינו שנה טובה, אמן. היום תשמע שוועתנו, אמן. היום תקבל ברחמים צדקך במינים, צדקך במינים, צדקך